With Bitcoin now moving sideways for nearly 4 whole months, a lot of people are wondering whether or not Bitcoin is going to enter a macro downtrend. In today's video, we're going to be discussing not only this, but as well the short-term price action, Bitcoin dominance, what exactly needs to happen for the bulls to reclaim control, and so much more. Let's go ahead and jump on in. Okay, MegaWhale team, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you're all having an amazing week. In today's video, we're discussing the short-term price action for Bitcoin, what is happening, what is likely to happen next, and the key levels you should be paying attention to moving into the next coming 24 hours. Of course, we'll also be discussing lower targets in case Bitcoin does continue down, and very importantly, the exact levels Bitcoin will need to break above to once again flip bullish. Alongside this, we're going over the Bitcoin dominance chart and the weekly and macro charts. So before we do get into it, smash that like button, hit that comment button, and subscribe to the channel. We post daily videos of Bitcoin focusing on the facts, the data, the technical, and the structural information. No hype, no BS, no emotion, just pure raw TA. That is the kind of content you are interested in. Join us on Telegram. It is the first link down below. You'll get access to charts, updates, videos, educational posts, news events, and everything you need to stay in the loop with cryptocurrency, with Bitcoin, and the relevant economic news. If that is what you're interested in and you like that kind of content and you want to bring your trading to the next level, join us on VIP. We post trading setups with exact entry prices, exact targets, exact stop losses, trade justification, exclusive analysis, and so much more. You can find out more about the VIP in the pinned comment of the free channel. Move up to that pinned comment, click my name to contact me, or click these links for more information. So go ahead and check that out if you're interested in. Let's dive on into the video. So starting on in the video today, we're going to be taking a look at that market data. So moving over to the market data, 24-hour volume, 121 billion, relatively high there, up 19%. 24-hour liquidations up 39%, 115 million of the 115 million, 60 million have come from long positions, 54 million have come from short positions. Taking a look at the short-term price action, a very brief look at it, we can see over the past 24 hours, Bitcoin was able to push past our trigger point on the short term, which was again 65,700, breaking through that region, continuing higher into the 66.5k region, only to see a rejection and breakdown back into our prior lows, which is going to be our 64.5 to 65k region. Again, liquidating those 60 million, near 60 million in shorts on the way up, and that near 60 million in longs on the way down, breaking back down to where we have been basically for the last 5 days. We'll come back and discuss in just a moment. Moving over to the DXY. The DXY, not doing too much here. We are looking quite strong. We have a few options that could occur. Number one, we cancel your challenging this downtrending diagonal resistance pretty soon. We also have this downtrend on the RSI. If we do see a breakout of both of these things, we will likely have a directional continuation upwards into the 108 to $107 region. Again, DXY rising is generally bearish for risk assets, so this could add some selling pressure for the DXY, for the S&P 500, for traditional markets, and even for Bitcoin. However, if we fail to break through these regions and reject from this area, we could see corrections moving forward into the next coming weeks towards our lower targets of 103, potentially even 102 to 101. Of course, this would be very bullish for traditional assets and risk assets as a whole, so pay attention to that. Moving over to the S&P 500, we have seen on the short term a little bit of rejection from 5,591, just shy of the $5,600 mark. Overall, still looking very bullish. Again, for the S&P 500 to flip bearish, we would need to see a loss of our prior high. If we zoom out to our macro charts, we have a very steady and very strong uptrend from our lows, creating these solid higher lows the entire way up, retesting major areas of support before continuing through those prior highs. So once again, for the S&P 500 to turn bearish, we would need to drop below this prior high, close a weekly under it, and that would send the price action all the way back down to retest those lows, likely entering a high time frame downtrend. Until that point, we are bullish. Until that point, expect continuations. You would know, guys, if you've been following me for a long time, I've been bullish on the S&P 500 from down here, and we told you guys the whole time we were in this range. This was accumulation before breakout. Even down in this region, we're telling you we were expecting macro continuations upwards. We have now seen that. Enough about that though, let's go ahead and jump into Bitcoin. Before we do, a quick word from today's video sponsor, and we'll jump on in. I'd like to introduce our partner, BitUnix. BitUnix is a global, non-KYC, no country restriction exchange, making it a perfect exchange to trade on if you're from the USA, from Canada, the Netherlands, or just prefer to trade without KYC. This exchange is a futures and spot exchange with over 200 different trading pairs, and some of the lowest fees in the game. If you sign up with my link down below, you'll get access to 15% off your trading fees, as well as an exclusive reward center where you can claim up to a multitude in USDT prizes. So go ahead and sign up with my link down below for 15% off, and I'll see you in there. Okay guys, let's go ahead and jump on in, and we are starting on the weekly chart today, discussing the high time frame first. So jumping into it, as we can see, we have 3 days, exactly 3 days until the upcoming weekly candle close, and the weekly candle close is going to be quite an important one. If we do see a weekly candle close below this lower horizontal red line, this lower line sits at a price point around 64,800, we will be closing below the 2021 Pi cycle high. This would be very, very bad. It would indicate we could see continuations to retest that 60K region, which we'll be discussing on the short-term analysis in just a moment. So for the weekly candle close to close bullish, we would really like to see a close above 64.8 minimum and positively above 65.5. While we remain underneath these levels, we are in this lower territory of the channel. We do have the possibility for an extended retracements towards our high time frame supports horizontally and diagonally. If we look at the macro chart again on a higher time frame, just zooming out a little bit, we can see we do have very clear trigger points for continuations and for correction, which is a really good thing. It's nice and easy to read. We have a high time frame horizontal consolidation. This horizontal consolidation has been since February, the end of Feb. So looking at February, we're looking at March, April, May, we're in June. We're looking at nearly 4 months of consolidation now, which is the longest form of consolidation we have seen for Bitcoin in a bull market. So in a bull market, we've never seen a 4-month long consolidation, which is absolutely crazy, guys. It's quite impressive actually, but it makes sense, right? If we look historically at the macro 4-year cycle, the macro 4-year cycle suggested that generally what we see is only in the 3rd year, the end of the 3rd year, we see Bitcoin break through its prior all-time high point. So we'll show you in the 2021 cycle, this is our prior all-time high. This is year 3. Only at the end of year 3 did we break through that prior high point. If we look at the cycle beforehand, only at the start of year 4 did we break through that prior all-time high. If we look at the current cycle, however, we broke through the prior all-time high all the way at the start of year 3, which is much, much quicker. In fact, it's about 209 days sooner than what we saw historically. This fact alone threw off the 4-year cycle and has potentially broken the 4-year cycle in terms of date range trends. But it is wise and it is, I guess, expected, right? It is expected to see when we break through a region much, much faster than expected, much, much faster than we should have, that we see extended consolidations. So it shouldn't come to as a surprise that we are seeing Bitcoin consolidate. In fact, it's probably a good thing that Bitcoin has been consolidating. It gives us some time to really reset before making those next directional moves. So zooming out again over here, we can see the 72K region is going to be the high, and of course our 60K region is going to be the low. To keep it nice and simple, a break over 72,000 will result in the consolidation coming to an end toward the upside, and we would expect directional continuations higher. Whereas a break below 60,000 would result in the consolidation coming to an end to the downside and result in directional continuations lower. What would that really mean? It would mean that the buyers and sellers within this region have exhausted, the buyers have exhausted, and the sellers have taken over, pushing the price lower. Whereas on the flip side, if we do break through this region, it would tell us that the sellers within this range have exhausted, which will give us a nice platform to then continue much higher. Okay, so let's now jump over to a slightly smaller time frame. Let's move over to the daily chart. What we can see on the daily chart is a very important trend line. We discussed this trend line actually not too long ago, and we'll actually go ahead and just drag this one out a little bit. We discussed it not too long ago. We discussed it yesterday and a few days before. This is simply the bull market uptrend. It's simply the bull market uptrend. If we look at the bull market started all the way back in October 2023 when we broke that 32,000 level. Again, we can get confluence with this in the monthly chart. Moving on to a monthly chart, if we look at the monthly chart over here, that 32,000 level breakout, this horizontal trend line right over here, this horizontal trend line, we're going to go ahead and highlight it. This breakout, that monthly close, was the start of the bull run. We were saying this entire time, from the bottom, when we monthly close about 32,000, we will go to new all-time highs. That is exactly what happened. So that is a trigger point for the bull run. What we see from this point, we have a diagonal uptrend developing from that region. That diagonal uptrend now is our bull market uptrend. So technically, Bitcoin is in a bull market while we remain above this trend line. Bitcoin can exhaust in bull markets, okay? It can consolidate in bull markets, but while we sit above the trend line, the macro trajectory of the price action is upward, and that is what the trend line represents. It represents a trajectory of price action over a period of time, and it represents an upward trajectory for Bitcoin. So it also acts as an invalidation for the current uptrend. What we can see is we've been in a 7 to 8 month long uptrend. So if we were to break down this level, we would then enter a new downtrend until we find high time frame support to then establish a macro reversal and continue upwards, or basically continue downwards. So it is unwise to assume Bitcoin is going to go anywhere lower than what this bull market trend line suggests while we sit above the trend line. And this trend line corresponds with two very key points. If we draw a vertical line first and foremost from where the price action is now, and we draw a vertical line to the point at which it crosses over, we can see it corresponds with the price range at the moment between 56,000 to 57,000, which is going to be our sell side liquidity of the prior correction, and that 60,000 to 61,000 low of the high time frame horizontal consolidation. So what does this tell us? It gives us a price range, this little triangular range of liquidity. This is a liquidation range, meaning if the price action is able to drop into this range, we would be assuming that to be deviation, and we would assume that to be a fake out of the trend until provided otherwise. Until proven otherwise, we would expect that to be a flash crash and then continuation upwards if it is retested. So the scenarios for Bitcoin are as follows. Number one, we fail to break above the short-term bullish trigger, which we'll be discussing in a second to give you context of this right now. The short-term bullish trigger is 67,000, okay? For us to continue upwards, we need to see a break of 67,000. So scenario one is we fail to do that. What would happen is we'd likely see a slow bleed out for price action of Bitcoin moving towards our next support, right? We bounce between high time frame resistances and high time frame supports, just as we've done here, literally nearly 5 or 6 times. We've done it the whole time, so it bounced between these levels. The high time frame support is at 60,000. As we saw before, we've seen breakdowns below 60,000 that lasted momentarily into these liquidity pockets. So we could see a drag out towards this region, only to bounce and then build back upwards and continue through, breaking out in around September 2024, maybe sooner, maybe a little bit later. That is a real possibility for Bitcoin. Again, provided this uptrend does not break. I don't care if it takes the entire time to break out. It doesn't really matter what happens, in my opinion. The range between here shouldn't be too concerning, provided this trend line holds. The only concern comes is for altcoins. Altcoins get wrecked when Bitcoin moves sideways. That is the main primary concern. But for Bitcoin, there shouldn't be too much concern. You should just be patiently waiting. Okay, are we going to break down? Okay, are we going to break up? If we break down, I know what to do. If we break up, I know what to do. That is simply all you need to do. Do not look at the 5-minute chart and then worry about what's going to happen in a higher time frame. If you want to worry about the higher time frame, look at the higher time frame. Contextualize what is happening on the higher time frame. Don't stress out about 5-minute movements of Bitcoin. It has very, very little impact on where the price action is going to go. Look at all these candles, all these wicks we've seen on these candles, all on the 5-minute chart. Have any of them really impacted Bitcoin in the macro? No, Bitcoin is still moving sideways. nothing's really changed, okay? So don't get caught up in a short-term price action if you were looking at high time frame invalidations and validation points. Scenario number 2 is, of course, we bounce from here, we break 67,000 and we continue through the high prior to retesting a low. I would say this scenario is slightly less likely while we are underneath the $67,000 resistance. So let's talk about the short term now so we can contextualize what we have been saying. If we take a look at the short-term price action and get rid of this really quickly, and maybe we'll get rid of the VRPV. Actually, we'll keep the VRPV up. What we can see here, guys, is we had a horizontal consolidation. The horizontal consolidation spanned from the start or mid-May all the way until the breakdown in June 15th. Since then, we have been consolidating underneath the horizontal resistance of the prior horizontal consolidation, moving towards our prior area of support, which is at 64.5 to 65,000. We've been consolidating now within this region for about 5 days, with a couple of attempts to continue upwards, but we haven't been able to break back above that 50 EMA. The 50 EMA being a definable region of where the price action is above it, we have short-term strength developing, which could lead to reversals. As we can see, we have basically rejected from this point every single time since the CPI data, which has been an indication not only we are in a moment of weakness for Bitcoin, but we are very much in a downtrend as represented by our downtrending diagonal trend line. So while we remain underneath the 50 EMA, while we remain underneath the downtrend diagonal trend line, while we remain underneath the horizontal region of resistance at 67,000, it is unwise to assume Bitcoin's is going to fly upwards, okay? The validation for that move is going to be a breakout of these 3 points. So remember, what do we look for? Structure, trend, strength. The 50 MA is a representation of the strength of price action. The downtrend diagonal resistance is a representation of the trend of price action. And the horizontal resistance at 67K is a structural level of resistance as per the prior horizontal resistance range. So that is our structural confirmation. If we have all 3 of those points validated and confirmed, we have a greater probability of directional continuations upwards as opposed to directional continuations downwards. So on the inverse of that, we can say when we have 0 out of the 3, which we currently have, the probability of directional continuations downwards are greater than the probabilities of directional continuation upwards. So we do not expect, okay? Therefore, we do not expect the price action to immediately go up, provided we remain under these levels. Let's talk about what is happening if we break above these levels. If we break above those levels, we are now back within the horizontal consolidation. This will be marked as an extended deviation, and we would expect continuations upwards. And on the high time frame chart, that would likely break 72,000. Again, unlikely from where we are sitting now. On the short term, Bitcoin is retesting our support reversal region. We have attempted reversals from here for a very, very long time now, all of which not really coming to fruition. Again, we need to see those validations for those reversals to really play out. So as of right now, if Bitcoin breaks between that low, we could expect a continuation to 63K on our short term. This is the next area of short-term support. If we lose 63,000, guys, there's not really much sitting there for Bitcoin between 63,000 and 60,000, this lower region of support. So we see that extended correction. We could then see that correction into that region over the next 2 weeks, maybe, if we do not sustain this level of support, most importantly, the 63K region of support. The good thing is these diagonal trend lines can be extended indefinitely until they are invalidated. So even if we do see those continuations downwards, we will still have that diagonal trend line as a trend reversal point wherever that price action is able to breach that level again from. So again, that is going to be something to watch out for reversals for Bitcoin. Until then, we are expecting potential downward price action. If we zoom in now to the absolute immediate price action, and then we'll wrap up the video on Bitcoin dominance after this, we can see Bitcoin is still hanging on by support. And like we say, if support is support until it's not, this red box is basically our lower area of support. We could see bounces from this region up into the 67, up into the diagonal resistance. And again, depending on the reaction at this region will determine the next move. So we'll see a bounce into this region. We see a poor reaction. We will see directional continuations downwards. If we see a positive reaction, we could see clearance of these prior high points and thus directional continuations upwards. So again, on the short term, if we look at those horizontal levels, we've got these prior trigger points around about this region. We can drag that level across at that 67K region. You can see it fits in perfectly right there. That breakout of that level right here would be the directional continuation upwards. That'll be the trigger point. So until then, we are playing cautious, potentially expect a bounce in the short term into this region. We don't break through, expect directional continuations downwards. Okay, guys, I'll wrap up the video there. Let's move over to Bitcoin dominance and we'll finish it up. Bitcoin dominance is still pushing slightly upwards, nothing too fancy over here. Again, while it sits underneath the 56 to 57% region, we are likely going to see an altcoin season eventually, as discussed in our video, provided Bitcoin remains in a bull market. If we start seeing a continuation upwards, this is going to bleed altcoins out to absolute bottoms, absolutely horrible stuff. If we see that, pay attention. If we see a breakdown of this trend line, we will very much likely see altcoins really start to regain strength, as the breakdown point right over here corresponds with the peak of the VRPV. After that peak, look what happens to the VRPV. We significantly drop off to that 48% region. That 48% region is that prior area of support. So if we do see that breakdown, what we would see is a breakdown into this range of support, which would retrace a very, very large amount of Bitcoin dominance and put a lot of money back into altcoins. So watch out. Altcoin season is still going to happen. It's still very, very likely. Just not right now. Okay. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys in the next video. See you then.